everybody. So in the program guide, it said leadership and conscious capitalism. Instead of talking about a particular movement about consciousness in business, what I'd really like to talk with you about are two things. One is new ways of thinking about how to have social impact through business, and maybe spark some thinking in your own mind about impact you might have at some point in your life and in your career. And then the other thing is to talk about the journey to impact. A couple of you were asking questions of Patrici about this, and I think about it from the perspective of Noella from Rwanda, who I was part of a mentor team for, about where all of you are. What is the journey to impact? Where does it start? And how do you move yourself into a position of impact? And we don't just get there, there's a journey to get there. So I want to talk about that as well. Sound all right? Yeah. Okay, good. And then hopefully have a good conversation, have a little fun in the conversation together, okay? So before diving into any slides, I just want to ask you a question about your perception of business. When you think about business and you think about what's important to business versus an NGO or government or education, what comes to mind? Just what pops into your head? Yeah.
I think when we talk about business, maybe making
Making a
profit.
profit.
Yeah.
And that is the most fundamental thing that you learn in business school, that the purpose of a business is to return a profit to shareholders. I happen to disagree with that, but that is a fundamental right now. Right. What else pops into your head? Yeah. Creating jobs. Hugely important. Yeah. What else? Making an impact. What ways do you think about making an impact?
Personally, I have a business and it's about making an impact because the environment I grew up in, there wasn't any ice cream shop and a safe space for kids to play. So
Mm.
before I started my business, that was what I wanted to create a space that kids will have fun and also enjoy what they do.
So this is great. What you're speaking about is if you put at the root of a business a purpose, then you can put at the root of that business that purpose for that kind of impact that you've identified. That's a great example. Yeah, what else?
Providing value creation to the customers.
Value creation to customers, that's really important for it to be an ongoing endeavor, for it to be a sustainable business. Yeah.
Providing solutions on social problems.
Yeah, so what's an example that you think of?
Maybe you've seen a social issues and you want to provide solutions. Like maybe to like what's it? Tyranny.
Tarani.
You've seen that people aren't getting better syrup and that's a social issue and then you're making equitable safe syrup for people.
Right. Okay, so that maybe the product that you're offering, maybe it's not in the case of Tarani, but maybe it's in the case of another company, that the product could be in and of itself of social benefit, or the way you structure the company, you can create some social benefit. Are those the kinds of ideas that you're speaking about? Okay, great. Yeah.
Just to add up to what she said, finding a solution to a problem. I took part in a entrepreneurship high school competition when I was in high school, and high school students come together and find a problem in a community. I'm from a, let me just say, rural area, and we were out of fresh fish. Our the people in the community buy and store fish that are still longer in the business owner hands, like the freezer
Yeah.
or the refrigerator. So we decided to get a fish farm where you would get a very fresh fish at any time you want so that you can stay healthy.
So you solved a community need in a for-profit way. That's a great example. Any other things? Yes, over here. The two of you have something. To live a comfortable life from profit of the business. And when you say that, it could be a comfortable life for you, and maybe you think about who else might it be a comfortable life for. That's the thing that I think about. How do we create a better life for everybody who's involved in the business? So to expand the circle of the success that that might bring. Yeah, Janet.
I think that business itself is a way of organization to accomplish a human need
Yes, I love that. So it's the organization of it to address a need, but it's also the way the interactions happen. Yeah, that is a completely unexplored possibility in most organizations, and I want to talk about that today. That's a great segue. You guys have more creative ideas about business than most rooms full of business people. So we're off to a really good start with She Can scholars, that's for sure. All right, so I want to talk with you a little bit about Tarani. So I've been with Tarani for a really so the sound is a little bit off, but you get the idea of it. So when you look at a company from the outside, you usually see the product, right? And when I first started thinking about business, I thought, well, I want to work with a company that has a product that's of social benefit. But when I tried some places, I tried educational software. I thought, the product is great. I did not like the culture of the company. They were promoting all men. There were no women in leadership. And they were using 0-1 engineering and programming thinking, not creative thinking. So I thought, maybe there's a different way to have impact through a business. And I really liked this company because they were in the most economically disadvantaged neighborhood in San Francisco. And I thought, maybe through hiring in the neighborhood, building a company through the culture of the company could be the way of impact. And that's how I got started with them. And the family for the company, they loved that idea. They were in on it, so they agreed. So let me share with you some of the things that define us now. Oh, not again. There we go. All right. Have any of you heard of B Corporation? Okay, yeah, of course you know what that is, huh? So we are a certified B Corporation. We are a certified benefit corporation. It's kind of surprising that in the United States, companies are required to maximize profit for shareholders. And what B corporations do is register with the state that they're in to not do that. We register with the state to maximize for all stakeholders. So it's a stakeholder model. We think of our team members, the employees. We think of our customers. We think of our suppliers and partners. We think of our community. And we think of the shareholders, right? So it's 5 primary stakeholders. It's not just the people who own the company. And then we get certified. We go through a rigorous process of evaluating and scoring us on how we do on sustainability, what impacts we have on the planet, and on others. So now this has become a symbol, and we joined this community not only to show that we were certified and that we could do it this way, but to join a community that can continue to expand the thinking about how we continue to push boundaries and what it means to be a B corporation and what it means to become a force for good in business. So we're proud to be a B corporation, but see where we have flavor for all, opportunity for all. We had to figure out and discover our purpose and define it as a company. We do that as individuals too, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But at Tarani, flavor is what we make, right? We make syrups, we make sauces, we make puree blends, we make flavor. But we talk about in Tarani that flavor is also what we bring. We have people who come from all walks of life at Tarani. I love that we make things because we have people who come in with very little education, who have on-ramps to opportunity. We have people who have very high levels of education. We have people who were born and raised in over 35 different countries. And we are out to show that that kind of mix of flavor in the people in a business makes us stronger and a better company, that we are able to achieve more because we have greater understanding from people from all walks of life and all perspectives. So, flavor for all. Opportunity is what we're all about. That's our underlying purpose. So we believe that businesses can and should create more opportunities for people. More opportunities economically, as well as in learning, growth, and development. And most companies don't think that way. So what we want to do is develop practices that can be easily applied in other places to expand our impact. So we want to practice and create more opportunity within Tarani and then document and codify those processes so that we can share it with people in the B Corporation community and in other business communities so that we start a movement. We start an opportunity movement within business. So that's the way we're thinking about our impact. So all of that has to start at home. So I've just been sharing this, what we believe. And by the way, the people in these pictures are all people from Tirani. They're people who I work with every day and who are like a functional family. You know how some families, if you're in business together, it can be very dysfunctional. We think of caring about each other like family, but being highly functional. So our core beliefs, that everything starts with people. We are a people-first company. I'll talk more about that. And that businesses can and should create more opportunities. And then one of the things that we defined early on, and this is important in a business, it's also important in nonprofit organizations or any others, we identified our core values. We looked at the history of the company, we looked at what was important to us personally, and we identified the core elements that are going to be consistent in our decision making, in our selection of people to join the company, in our onboarding of people, in our promotion of people, in all the ways we think about the growth and development of the company. So it is, first of all, care deeply for people. And I onboard every new team member to Tirani in these core values. So grow, baby, grow, which means not only that we're going to grow the company, which we do, we've grown the company on average 20% a year over the 33 years I've been there. So lots of growth. We double in size about every 4 years. And that also means that we have to grow our own capabilities and support the growth and development of our teams and of the individuals in the company. So we're looking for people who are open to growing. Drive for quality, really, which for us we define not only as quality in the products, of course, but it's quality for us is in the ability for somebody to be able to ask for support, to ask a question, to raise their hand, and share a different point of view. So we talk about quality and our ability to have meaningful conversation. And then do the right thing. So this is how we grow the company. These are the pillars of how we get started. So I shared a little bit about where I started. We were very tiny, and then we've grown a lot. It doesn't happen overnight. It took a long time. It took a while to figure out this impact, and now I feel like we're really poised to make substantial change. We're having impact in the lives of people in our business, and we're starting to have more impact in the community. There's a lot more to do. But I was thinking back in time to when Noella first came to the US. This is Noella, who's back in Rwanda now. This was day 2 in the United States. She came to stay with me first among the mentors. And we went to the UC Berkeley campus. So that's my daughter, Noella. And then the man standing with us is the head of the economics department at that time, and again right now, Shahar Kariv, an amazing guy. And they are doing such incredible research around income and wealth inequality in the United States and around the world. And so I continue to stay connected through UC Berkeley, which is where I went to school. But I was thinking about standing on this spot where the civil rights movement happened, all kinds of protests were founded. Like, this is a place, and I thought, I would have been so surprised at my 18-year-old or 20-year-old self and where I've ended up. I wouldn't be surprised by my principles, but I wouldn't have thought I would be in business. And I wouldn't have understood my path. Looking back on it, it makes sense. And I was putting myself in Noella's shoes, because I know Noella was saying, well, I'm not going to, how can I do that in Rwanda? Well, of course she can do it, but it's not where you start. You start somewhere else. So I was thinking, what is the starting point? So I'm a faculty member for a program at Oxford University in England called Economics of Mutuality. It's a program that looks at how do we create purposeful businesses that grow mutual benefit for all people. And these are some questions that we ask people who are pretty senior in their careers. I think it's meaningful for us here too. So one is, it's to reflect on personal experience. Why do I do what I do? Why do I make the choices that I do? Why do I behave the way I do? Why have I chosen to be in the role that I'm in the company or organization I'm in? Or in the nonprofit organization I'm volunteering in? Why do I make this choice? And usually it comes from an exploration of what has brought me the most joy and fulfillment in work and in my career so far. And what are the factors that produce that? So these are questions that we explore with the executives who take this program, and I've also explored these questions with my own team. And we find that we get to very meaningful conversation about what drives our personal purpose and how we connect that to our work. And I think these are questions that you are more in touch with than most US students in your universities and your colleges. We're not in touch with these things early on in our lives, usually in the US. You are way more in touch with these things. But it's always an exploration. So I wanted to share a little bit of my own personal experience in this regard. I'm just going to refer to this. So I want to share my journey through these questions, and then maybe take a pause at the end, or think about it, talk about it over lunch, or think about journaling on this, what your own experiences are. I start with the second question first. What has brought me the most joy and fulfillment at work? And that is such an easy question for me to answer. I think immediately of Clement. I think about Francisco. I think about Tatiana. I think about Amy. I think about Kiana. I think about the people who come from very challenging circumstances in their life. Clement was one of the so-called lost boys of the Sudan, who lived a good portion of his young life in a refugee camp, made his way to the United States eventually through a church group, and has been with us at Tirani for 16 years. When I think about Clement, when I think about Francisco, these other individuals I mentioned, and so many more, I have incredible joy at seeing that they found their footing. They found a place to land, to grow, to develop, to expand economically, to support a family, to change the trajectory of their lives, and begin to change the trajectory of their entire family lives, and then many of them, their communities' lives. That gives me fierce joy in my work. The other thing that I get really excited about is the people that I connect with very closely, people who report to me or who I mentor or coach within the company and outside as well. But when I see somebody break through, when I see them maybe struggling with leadership or management or something else, being able to be by their side, reflect with them, and help them break through challenging moments, because we all face them all the time. So those are the things that bring me joy. So where does that come from? You all have similar things. If you look at what brings you joy, what brings you that kind of feeling of fulfillment, it usually comes from early in our lives, experiences we've had. And you've had incredible experiences. I think back on why do I do what I do? I think about my early childhood experiences and what has shaped my very strong opinions that have led me in this direction. So for me, it begins early when my parents were divorced when I was 4 and my brother was 3. My mother struggled. It was early. Women in the United States, Barb, you were referencing this. My mother couldn't get credit on her own. She had to have the signature of her husband or her father. Can you imagine that in the US it was like that? She'd gone to USF, Tarly, right? Or not where you are, but where's Chanel? Oh, back here, hi. So she went to USF. She was the second class of women to be admitted to USF. And when she got engaged to be married, because it was Catholic and she was from a good Catholic family, they said, you don't need to be in school anymore. We're dropping you from the rolls. And she didn't know enough to fight for herself. It didn't occur to her because it's not what women did. And I saw her struggle. She went back to school to get her college degree. She held 3 jobs, and she made it. But I remember thinking as a girl, why is it so hard for her and not for my father? Is this what it will be for me also? So I didn't have the words for it, but it was the experience of it. And you all experience things that are far more deep than that. Another event happened a little later in my years. I had a stepmother who was an elementary school teacher, primary school teacher in San Francisco. And she was teaching 5th grade. So kids who were like 11, 12. And she organized a field trip for the children in her class to go to the beach, to go to see the ocean. And I thought, I was about their age at that time, and I thought, what? That's just 2 miles away, just like 3 or 4 kilometers away. Why are you going to the beach? It's because most of them had never seen it. Most of them had never seen the ocean, and they lived in San Francisco. And it struck me how wildly different our experiences can be, even when we live in the same community. And so these are the early experiences that began to shape my understanding of the differences in opportunity, right? Later in college, I did other things. I became involved in studying and trying to understand what was happening in Central America. And you could see the inequities in places around the world. And that doesn't even begin to discuss race and other things in the US, but it gives eyes to those kinds of things. So I look at those and I think all of you have far more deep experiences that shape how you think about things and how we bring them to our work. So those things become meaningful to us in terms of our personal purpose and what we bring to whatever environment we're in. So let me fast forward a little bit. So I began to question in my life what I would do. I went to school to UC Berkeley. I studied abroad. I became involved in the Central America movement. I started a search, like, what kind of job can I get? Where do I go? What am I going to do? I worked on a campaign for Congress. I thought, maybe it's government. Maybe government is where change needs to happen. And there was a woman running for office for Congress in the US. There weren't many women in Congress. I thought, I'm going to go support her. And I worked very hard as a volunteer in her campaign, and I ended up going to Washington, D.C. and worked for her for a year. And I thought, this is not the place for me. It's important, but it wasn't the place where I felt like the impact was going to be had. I thought, no, maybe it's in an NGO, it's in a nonprofit, maybe it's in women's health, which I care a lot about also. So I came back to San Francisco, and I began looking, and I worked in a nonprofit that went bankrupt. One of you mentioned, you mentioned like the ability to make a living, right, to earn from the business. If a nonprofit goes bankrupt, you're out figuring it out again. So I was trying to figure out, where could I have that sense of belonging? Where could I have that sense of impact? I ended up finding my way to business. I took a temporary position with a small organization that was helping small companies grow. And I thought, well, I still want to work in nonprofit, and I thought if I went to business school, I could earn the credibility to do well and to use business skills in the nonprofit environment. In between years, I went to Arkansas to work along the Mississippi Delta to help get small minority businesses up and running, to get them credit to support their businesses. And I met people who were working on reservations for Native people in New Mexico, people who were working in coal mining regions, people who were working in urban areas within Chicago, all across the country. And they said, go to the other side. There are a lot of like-minded people in the nonprofit side. Go to the other side. You're getting a business degree. Go to the other side, build a bridge. We will meet you in the middle. And I've been working on that ever since. And it's been really hard to figure it out. But I think we're finally starting to make some progress. But I went to the other side, and I decided to work in business. So I wanted to share a few things that we're working on that I think can really create a different way in a business, a different way of working. So first of all, couple of you brought this up. There's a very traditional view of business and of people in a business. And that is this view of what we're driven and motivated by. The view in business, traditionally, is that we as humans are motivated by money, by status, and by power. And these are real. These are motivations that certainly are there for people, but I don't believe they're the only ones or even the primary ones. So what I've explored is a more realistic view, I think, which is I think we are motivated by meaning, by belonging, and by our ability to grow and develop. It doesn't mean that these other ones aren't present, but I believe these are more primary. With that view of business, then I think about, well, what then becomes the structure of business? Because right now, the way we're structured, it's a financial-based model. It's to maximize profit for shareholders, the owners of the company. It's to negotiate contracts and to engage in transactions and to do that efficiently. And it's a hierarchy. It's a command and control hierarchy. It's top-down. It's the boss, right? Saying things. It's decisions held at the top. So under a more human operating system, here's what I'm thinking is a more human-centered model. That we build impact for stakeholders. How do we help our team members? How do we help our community? How do we think of our business as a circle of success with our suppliers? So it's not just that we negotiate every dime out of a contract, but we think about how we have a meaningful, sustainable relationship. Relationships of engagement and collaboration. And an ecosystem of coaching and contribution. So it's not managing someone's performance and telling them what to do, but it's how do we coach and develop people. So I want to give you some examples of these different operating systems in practice. So far, so good? Yeah? All right. Here are a couple. So I think if we have a people-centered operating system, this is true in business. This can also be true in other organizations. How might we consider alternative ways of making decisions, alternative structures and processes, and also ways to measure success? Because the status quo isn't working in the right way. So how do we begin to question the status quo? So here are some ways that I've questioned it with the team at Tarani. So first of all, alternative decision making. If we are people first, when do we make decisions that consider that instead? So one is, how do you handle an economic downturn? Do you know what happens in most companies when the economy goes down? Layoffs. Yeah. You were here during COVID, many of you. Do you remember people getting laid off? Yeah, a lot of layoffs. In our 99-year history of Tarani, we've never had a layoff. And it's because we think about how not to. So when we're faced with a decision, like with COVID, we were shutting down. Our customers were shutting down. And we thought, we don't know what's going to happen. We have hundreds of people who rely upon us for their work and for their living. So we did some very quick financial analysis. Instead of using people to support the financials, we flip it the other way around. So we said, what if our business goes down by 20% for the year? How do we make it and keep everyone employed? And we figured it out. It wasn't going to be easy, but we figured it out. And we said, all right, now that we figured that out, let's do the exercise again and use 50%. How will we keep everyone employed if the business goes down by 50%? And we figured it out. Then we could turn to our team and say, everyone has a job. In fact, we're going to have premium pay for the people who are on site. And we made our way through. And there's more complexity to it than that, but whether it's a recession, the Great Depression, COVID, we use our financial modeling to figure out how to have full employment. And then when our business took off after COVID in these last couple of years, we had everyone on the team to help us grow and take advantage of the success that we then created together. Here's another thing, where to relocate a company. Most companies look at where can I operate the cheapest. So when we had outgrown our facilities, we had moved from San Francisco to South San Francisco. We were there for 25 years. And then we needed to move. We'd outgrown everything. And we put a team together and said, all right, help us figure out where we're going to go. And they said, there are big tax incentives if we move to Arizona or Nevada. And we said, here is a zip code map of where our people live. We want 100% retention of our team when we move. That means the radius that we'll consider is very small. We'll look at the East Bay, Oakland, San Leandro, Hayward. That's the distance we would go because we think we could still have 100% of the people move with us. Because the way we look at it, the value of the company, yes, there's value in the brand, there's value in what we build, there's value in our relationships. But the greatest value is our team. So that's the boundary we set, and then we let everyone in our company know that we were going to move 2.5 years in advance so that we could work with them to engage them in the design. So these are examples of alternative decision making. So it's in the moment when most people have an automatic response to think about how do I protect the profit, we say, how do we protect the people? All right? Let me give a different example. Structures and processes. This is a big one. I always question, what's the context for why we do it that way? Does it work? And is there a better way? So, compensation. How do people get compensated? Have you thought about compensation systems at all? Probably not. But like how do wages and salaries get determined? So I realize it's always based on market. And what market has done is paid women less, paid minorities less, paid people with lesser educational degrees a lot less. And why? It pays CEOs more and more, executives more and more, and hourly people very minimal. Does that work? It really doesn't. So I started to wonder, we did a survey. We said, we're a B corporation. We want to be able to offer a living wage so that people who join our company, right off the bat, if you are earning an hourly wage, you have a living wage that will allow you to sustain yourself in our local community. And there's a living wage calculator that comes from MIT. So we use that. So we told our compensation specialists when we were looking at our plan, we want to be living wage or beyond. This is important to us as a company. And they came back and they said, oh, your top executives are earning less than market, and your hourly people are earning more than market. You can keep their pay there or cut it, and we recommend you raise the pay of executives. And we said, what if we think the market is immoral? And we don't want it to be that way. And they said, well, this is the way everyone does it. We said, well, what if we want to do it differently? What would you propose? What's a framework we could use? And they said, well, all compensation agencies work this way. If you want a different framework, what we suggest is that you create a philosophy that becomes your framework. And then you would apply that philosophy whenever you look at compensation. We said, great, can you help us get started with that? So we built a framework and we said, frontline team members, hourly team members, we are going to pay above market. Executives, CEO, we will probably pay below market. And that's okay because we're trying to look at the relationship between the top executives and the rest of the people in the organization. We also said we're going to pay everyone in the company a bonus. That's unusual for hourly pay. We're going to offer everyone the same benefits. And we're going to offer everyone profit sharing and ownership in the company. Everyone. So we set out this philosophy, and now we use that in our practices. There's one other thing that we think about. Management, performance management. When you get into an organization, you will be evaluated. And usually that evaluation process is not that great. Have any of you ever been in a performance appraisal that you thought, this is terrific? This is really developmental. Almost never. It's usually used at the end of a year to justify an increase in pay. And we thought, what if we flip that on its head and instead we invite people to contribute to the company? They set goals, but we also set goals for the development and learning. And then we have an engaging discussion about that. So we use contribution management. We've created a whole different kind of system around it rather than performance management. And it's enlivening. We all enjoy it. We don't dread it when it comes around. So we look to build alternative structures and processes when we question, does the status quo really work? One other, measuring success. So most companies measure their financials. Yes, we need to do that to make sure that we're operating well. But what are the key performance indicators and measures that we use to make sure we're achieving our purpose? So those are harder to figure out. So here are some. We have people-related key performance indicators. One is we want high retention and low turnover. Most manufacturing companies in California and in the US have more than 20% turnover. That means every year 20% of the team leaves their job and goes somewhere else. During COVID, the average was over 30%. Some were 40 or 50%. Those were people who had jobs that decided to leave. Ours is always single digit. That's an important measure for us because we know that if we're offering the right things and developing people and giving them opportunities to advance in their careers, they'll stay. We know that they may move on to another place, and that's okay, but we hope their next best opportunity might be with us. So that's one thing. Another is living wage as a benchmark. You have a question? Yeah. I think there are many reasons, but usually it's because the business is struggling, and when you look at the financials, they run out of money, and that's the first thing that people think about. Well, let's lay people off. I remember getting a call from a friend during COVID. She said, I just got laid off. Our company's laying off. You guys must be laying off too. I said, no, it's the last thing we would do. It's usually the first thing people think of when they're in management. So I always think, how do you make it the last thing that you think of? How do you figure out something else? But it could be because the company is struggling in their core business. Maybe they're not doing well in their core business as well. So you need to run a business well, and then you need to think about what do we use first as a guide? And we always think, when we're in a challenging situation, the question we ask ourselves on our executive team is, once we come through this, what will have made us proud in the way we handled it? And that's always a good question to think about. So it's not that we use our emotions to guide us. I feel like in a leadership role, I have emotions all the time. I can't exhibit them all the time, but I notice them, and then I make sure always to follow my heart and think about what's important in this moment and be able to express it with calm and clarity about what's going to be important. So living wage benchmark is important to us, that everybody gets to a living wage and beyond very quickly or right out of the gates. Here's another one. Most people hold on to wealth. We think about how do we share it. So we have a profit sharing plan. Everybody in our company earns profit from the company. And when we had the opportunity, we bought part of the company to turn it into a plan for stock ownership for every person on our team. So now everyone in the company gets a statement every year of the value that we created. We're privately held, so we have processes that we follow to do this. But people earn now ownership in the company every year. So we look at that as a measure of success is the wealth that we create for our team members. And now what we're beginning to explore in a lot more depth is how do we create work opportunities and how many do we create through partnerships in the community. For example, with cafe customers, we're supporting them to create jobs for people with learning differences and Down syndrome. And we have special support for those kinds of for-purpose cafes. And then we're looking at our local community. How do we bring people out of very challenging situations? Maybe it's they're coming out of prison. Maybe they're coming out of homelessness. Maybe they're coming out of drug addiction. How can we be a place that they have safe landing and support? And our team is very excited about participating in coaching and mentoring and supporting people who come from challenging backgrounds. So these are ways that we think about a different kind of business operating system. This requires the board of directors to agree to this. So another important thing is the ownership has to be aligned. So we happen to be in a place where the primary owner is a woman, Lisa Lucetta. She's the granddaughter of the founders. She's a dear friend of She Can. I consider her like a sister to me. She's a mentor. And Lisa and I combined own more than half of the company. Our team owns a big piece of the company now, so we get to decide, right? So we can operate this way. And because we're registered as a B corporation, we can operate this way. So these are important factors. So let me come back to Noella. This is Noella at her graduation in 2022. Wellesley College. She's so great. Every time I see her picture, it makes me smile. So Noella, we were there at her graduation. We helped her go shopping, buy her first work clothes and other things, and she got on a plane and went back to Rwanda.
Right after graduation, like.
Yeah, that weekend. Like we said, Noella, she says, I'm starting a new job on Wednesday. I need to get home. And her job she found because She Can helped her find a job with 1 Acre Fund. They support small farmers throughout Rwanda and a good portion of East Africa. So I have to tell you, I think about the impact that Noella can have, and she was a little bit scared, excited. She was really excited to get home to her family. She had reverse culture shock, like Patricia was sharing. But here's the biggest thing. We got on a call with her. She got into her new job, and we had a call with her, our mentor team, about 1 month in, and she was struggling. We said, what's going on? How's your new job? How's it going? She said, well, it's really, really hard. The first thing she did is went to talk with people to learn about the organization, and they turned to her and they said, you need to go do your job. Why are you talking to us? Why are you asking these questions? She realized that the culture in the organization, even though it's a wonderful one, and the culture of work in Rwanda is not one that she became accustomed to in the classroom in the US and in internships that she'd had. That it was one where it was hierarchical, it was not collaborative, and inquiry wasn't appreciated. And so we talked with her and said, you need to find places where that might be okay in that organization. And you know what, Noella? This is a need. It's a more effective way to operate. It's not just that you want to say, hey, we need to operate this way. It's actually more effective, and you may have to create that. You might have to begin by creating the culture within your own team. And that's what we began to discuss. So fast forward to today. We had a call with Noella a couple months ago. And she now has a team of people. She has 6 people who are reporting to her a year and a half later. And they're working on agroforestry. And she is so happy because she has created a culture of inquiry, of collaboration, of working together, and applying in her own culture in ways that she can figure out, things that she learned from the US, things that she learned on her study abroad in Korea as well. But she's taking all of her experiences and putting them together to create change within an organization. And each of those people who are on her team are not going to want to be on a team where behaviors aren't like that. So she is, in her power of one, creating a ripple. She has begun. She's begun to have that impact. And it starts, that can happen in any organization, that you create that ripple of change. So she's on her journey. She knows she's not there yet where she wants to be, the impact she wants to have, but we can already see and encourage in her the impact that she's having for a number of people, even in the way they work. And Janeth, I think this is what you're referring to, in the people dynamics, right? In any organization, the way we interact and behave with each other is maybe the first way that you can have impact. So I want to pause there. We're almost at time, and open it up to some questions. So I wanted to make sure to share ways that we can reimagine business as a force for good. And you can see it's ways to question the status quo. I used to be very angry about it and more like protesting it, and I realized I can be more effective by showing the success. That I can bring love, and I can speak about love and care about people, because I can also show all the people the financial track record of success. That I needed both of those things to be credible. Now I can talk about love when I go into business meetings and talk with people from outside the company. I couldn't talk about that until I had credibility with them. So I had to build my credibility. But it's been a journey of impact, continue to have impact. For me, it's deeply rooted in this idea of creating pathways to opportunity for many people and sharing success in ways that have not been imagined in business before. But there are so many ways to have impact, and all of you are on the beginning of that kind of journey. So I think it's getting in touch with your personal purpose and being in touch with that regularly and finding the environment where you feel you can flourish and begin that. Yeah. Yeah.
6 minutes for questions.
Yeah.
Seems like you have a quota, like 25% of revenue increase per year. How do you make sure that happens while also making sure that your employees are being cared for?
Right. So we don't have a quota. We plan for growth, but we've exceeded our plans for growth. And what we pay attention to is, it starts with me. If the company is going to double in size, it means we're increasing our complexity, and we need to increase our capability, and we need to increase our value to our customers. How do I develop myself to be the leader that I want to be of an organization that's twice the size? So I'm always developing myself. And then we do this throughout the entire organization. We look at development. So when we talk about contribution conversations, every single person in the company has a conversation with the person that they report to about how they want to learn, grow, and develop. So if I'm an hourly team member, say, in manufacturing, it might be, I've learned this position well. I'd like to explore this other area. And then we look at, okay, in that area, we will help with training and development for you to move into explore that area. So that's the way we do it. And we always think about how are we growing and developing our capabilities. We have people who stay with us, but we're also hiring in people from outside, and we think, what can we learn from them? What new capabilities will they bring us? So I think because we've been so open and flexible to the growth and change of ourselves, it means that we continue to over-deliver on the growth, because that's an extraordinary growth rate for a company, but we set our targets lower than that. It's just usually that we exceed them. And then we get to share. Everybody in the company gets a bonus when we exceed our goals. Yeah. Yeah.
The first question is that I'm wondering from this perspective, what does profit mean to you? And then the second question is that, do you think is it possible for the small businesses and the mom and pop businesses to be sustainable and to do a good things for the environment, for the people? Because those things comes with expenses.
Sure. Maybe they come with expenses, and maybe actually there are efficiencies that you can gather when you look at those things. Like when I think about our success, I think by offering more benefits and living wage, most people in other businesses, when I talk about getting to living wage, they say, well, we can't do that. We can't afford it. I said, if we can afford it in the San Francisco Bay Area, I think you can afford it. What's your turnover rate? How many people do you have leaving your company? And they'll often have, a norm is maybe 10 or 15%. There's a huge cost in that people don't measure. So we begin to look at the hidden costs that people aren't valuing. And we can begin to show, business-wise and financially, why some of these choices are a far superior way to work. So it's finding the reasons that it works and sharing those that persuades people to explore a change. And mom and pops, yes. We support mom and pops who are striving for other things. And for those mom and pops, it comes down to, okay, it's important to earn a living. And sometimes it's just that. And that's all you can do, and that's okay. But if you have a little extra ounce of a little extra bandwidth, what do you care about that you might want to make a difference in? I think they can think about that too. Did you have a question over here? Yeah.
My question is, what did it take you to be in operate a business that makes such an impact? How much of coming out of the comfort zone and also learning did it take?
Yeah. So I didn't start with a company at this size. I would not have been successful. I had to start in a place that most people didn't want to work. You're going to go work in that neighborhood? It's dangerous. It was the highest murder rate in San Francisco was in that neighborhood. And it was in the 3-block radius in which we worked. It was hard work and the pay was low. But I was so motivated by what we could do. So I think I took a risk in there. And once we started to grow it and develop it, I had so many colleagues from business school who said, I'd like to do what you're doing. How do I begin that? And part of it was that they had the confidence in me because the risk was not high for them when the business was like that. So I found a place where it was low risk for them, and it was important to me because I thought, I care about this neighborhood, and hiring people from the neighborhood will make a difference for the neighborhood. And then, of course, those people made sure that everyone was safe in our place because they were growing and developing their neighborhood and the jobs in their neighborhood. So it created a virtual cycle for us as an organization. Does that answer the question? There might be more.
Yeah, answer the first part.
Okay.
How much, two questions.
Yeah.
How much of coming out of the comfort zone and learning did you?
I'm always in an uncomfortable zone. Always. So I try to look at what I need to learn next. I'm always developing myself. And I joined peer learning groups. First, I joined a group of women who were running companies because we could support each other and talk about how do we enter a room? How do we work with people in these different environments? Then I joined a CEO learning group that was mostly men. And I learned there that the facilitator of that group came for a coaching session and she said, well, you've attended your first group meeting and some of the men have a problem with you. I said, what? She said, it's not your problem, it's theirs. They don't like that you participated openly and you shared your ideas and opinions. And I said, well, what do I need to do differently? And she said, nothing, it's their problem. But I realized the way I enter an organization or a group, the standard was that women needed to be more quiet. So I always think about how do I enter to gain credibility and then really use my voice. And it's hard. We have to support each other. The more women who join that group, the less that became an issue. So I've always made sure to support women and talk with women, take every call with a woman who's running a company to talk about how we might do things differently and how we support each other.
Can I ask last question?
Yeah. And then I'll be here. I'll be here over lunch too if you want to talk.
Melanie, will you tell us, do you think that the things that you just described about how your organization is people-centric and community-centric and fosters people first, the people are first, is that, do you think, instrumental to why your profits have been 20% year after year?
Completely. So not only do I think that is what has made us successful, I also think it's a distinctly female style of leadership. I don't call it that around the male colleagues, right? They don't want to hear that they're operating in a female style of leadership. But the fact is, by putting people at the center makes it acceptable for all the women and men. But I do believe it's distinctly female to think in a way that includes a broader portion of our community and how we share that success. So I think it's the right thing to do, and it's showing in the business results. Yeah.
Because I just want to say, 20% increase over 30 years is phenomenal. Like, that just doesn't happen per year. And I've introduced Melanie before, and I've heard those statistics, and I'd get to it, and I go, wait, it couldn't be 20% every year for 30 years. I think I got that wrong. And then I'd go look it up, and I'm like, no, it is exactly what they have achieved. And it's just really phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to keep talking over lunch, okay?
You know, I have one more thing.
Yeah.
I want to just come back to our 4 pillars, and I just want to make sure you guys understand, because remember, the last session, everyone's going to have to present on one of these 4 pillars, and you reframed it. What did you reframe? It was going to be conscious capitalism, and you.
Oh,
What did you reframe
well,
it as?
it's social impact through, this is about social impact through business, but it really is, where in whatever organization we're in, it's how do we question the status quo of the way things are done in a way that can engage and invite people into solving for that with us. That's kind of the trick that I've had to learn, is rather than protest things, how to jujitsu it and invite people in to solve things a little differently. But social impact through business is the gist of it, but it's also finding the journey to personal purpose.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But social impact can happen in any sector. You just have to find your place.